Welcome back to the Tulsa World Sports Extra podcast. I'm your host, Juwan Lee, joined today by sports editor Barry Lewis, OU beat writer Eric Bailey, and with us for the first time, fellow OU beat writer Mason Young. Mason, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Glad to be here for the first time and looking forward to talking a little bit of OU spring game with you guys.
Great, great. And we could jump right into it. That's the first topic on today's list. OU spring game was last Saturday. A lot of big deals came out of that, specifically Dion Burks. Eric, I want to ask you because this has been floating around Twitter and the internet. Is Dion Burks the next great OU receiver?
I was really impressed with Dion on Saturday. We got a chance to talk to him before the game, and he had mentioned that he wanted to be the next great slot receiver. He said the bar had been set by Drake Stoops. He wanted to be the guy that could replace Drake Stoops, and he did that and then some on Saturday. The fourth play of the game was a 64-yard touchdown pass from Jackson Arnold, and then he added a 50-yard touchdown reception a little later in the game. He's fast. He really is. He's a dynamic player. Will he be the next great receiver? Time will tell. But he did some great things up at Purdue when he joined the Sooners via the transfer portal. He was really craved by a lot of different schools, and it was just a matter of time of seeing what he could do. We've seen it now, and I think he's really going to fit in really good when you think about some of those other receivers in that room: Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk, guys like that, Brennan Thompson. It's going to be interesting to see how they use him.
Mason?
Yeah, I mean, the 174 yards he had the other day was the would have been the most that OU would have had in a game last year. Their most last year was 164 by Stoops against West Virginia. So already, their legacies are obviously going to be very distinct, but you can definitely see that the production is going to be replaced and potentially then some. Fans on social media are already talking about this guy as like a Bolitnikoff contender, and we'll see if he's that good. A lot of things have to go right. You think about how do Jackson Arnold and that offensive line handle the adjustment to playing in the SEC. You also think about what kind of defense is Dion Burks going to go up against, because that OU secondary he was running by, this past weekend was a lot of younger guys that they were getting reps. Two of OU's top, DBs, Woody Washington and Billy Bowman, didn't play. They held those guys out, to make sure that they stayed healthy. So those are all big talking points and thinking about how successful Dion Burks could potentially be. But man, you love the speed and the versatility. I mean, we saw one route. He ran the first touchdown from the slot, but then the second route, he was essentially outside, only guy on his side of the field. They started him right on the hash, and then he ran his route inside the hash and just got by everybody. So they're going to be very creative with what they can do with him, and the charisma is just unmatched. I mean, guy's got a great smile. We saw the touchdown dance that he did after the second touchdown. He said it was something he got off TikTok and that he decided to try out for the game. And it just seems like he has everything that he needs in terms of the speed, the swag, even the smile. You remember Hollywood Brown had his gold teeth. This guy's got the pearly whites. It seems like he has everything he needs to be the next great OU receiver and potentially a Bolitnikoff Award winner.
Mason, for you, which position group played better than expected? And if it was one, which position group underwhelmed during the spring game?
Played better than expected. I'll highlight the defensive line. Just a lot of young guys, not a lot of experience, but we saw some good things, pressure wise from Grayson Halton, from Devon Sears, from David Stone, guys that they're expecting a lot out of this season. And it's still like you have to take it with a caveat because those like sacks that they put up in the spring game, they're not actually like really hitting guys. And then also you take into account that a lot of their production came against the second team offensive line. So that side of it kind of tempers your expectations a little bit more. But you saw some good things from them that made you feel a lot better about where this group could potentially be now that they've already added one transfer defensive lineman in former Louisville lineman Jermaine Lole. He committed yesterday. and they're still in the hunt for, say, a Dominic Williams who's transferring from TCU, who is a very productive player from TCU the past 2 seasons. Seeing what the guys they already had in the room brought to the table makes you feel better about what the group could be if they get a couple more pieces. And in terms of underwhelmed, it was the secondary. It was them getting blown by Dion Burks. But as I mentioned earlier, some older key guys not playing, some younger guys getting their feet wet is pretty much what that amounts to. I think they'll be all right when the season comes.
Eric, same question for you.
I really like seeing some of the new running backs. I think Sam Franklin is going to be fun to watch. I think he was someone who I was really curious to see how he was going to play, and I think that watching him run the football was a lot of fun, as well as Caleb Hicks. He was someone that we didn't really get a chance to see a lot of last year. He had a nice 30-yard touchdown run, and I think seeing him with the football in his hands was fun to watch. Those two just getting some reps because Gavin Sawchuk, we know what he can do. He just ran 5 times. So seeing Hicks and Franklin with the football in their hands, that was fun to see. Behind an offensive line that's still a work in progress, that was good. Underwhelmed. This is totally unfair because he's a freshman, a true freshman. But Michael Hawkins, he's going to grow. He's going to get better, and it's totally unfair because he was behind an offensive line again. That's a work in progress. When Hawkins was good, he was very good. But I think he's got so much room to grow, and he's going to get a lot better. I don't. I guess it's just almost unfair to say underwhelmed. I'm just more excited about what he has in front of him. So when I say underwhelmed, I don't think that's fair to him, but I'm more excited about what's in store for him and what he has ahead of him.
Moving over to the pro basketball end, we're recording this the Tuesday after the Thunder's playoff opener Sunday against the Pelicans and Barry. I mean, it was a very good game. Showed me a lot what this Thunder team is made of. SGA had some clutch moments there to come away with the game one win. Did that performance encourage you or discourage you about this Thunder team moving forward in this playoff series?
It was initially discouraging as the game went along, especially with about 3 minutes to go. When I was remembering last week, I said the Pelicans were the ideal matchup or the best matchup for the Thunder. At that point, it wasn't looking so good. But since the Thunder survived, the more I thought about it, I think it was encouraging for the Thunder because for the first time, they are enter in at least as a perceived favorite, being the number one seed, although most people aren't picking them to win the West. So there's a lot of pressure, though, being number one seed. And a lot of times when I was thinking back in the Thunder's heyday, 10, 12 years ago with Russ and KD, that they had some close calls in playoff openers in which they were heavily favored. They survived them, and then they rolled to deep playoff runs. So I think actually, if you can survive a close game like the Thunder did the other night, I think that is more beneficial for you moving ahead in the playoffs than if you would have won by 30 points and think it was going to be really easy.
Mason.
I really only have one word on this, and it's rebounding. I mean, that one fourth quarter possession where the Pelicans got like 5 chances at that shot just drove me crazy. And it's been, if you've been watching the Thunder this season, it's been a concern the whole time, right? They're kind of the nature of the personnel that they have at the five is kind of undersized to kind of fit how the modern NBA looks. But then you've got these teams like, say, Minnesota that has two really big bigs in Gobert and Towns that present a lot of problems for a team like the Thunder. So that's definitely going to be, something to monitor moving forward. You would hope that the Thunder could just wrap this up without, before Zion Williamson gets back, because he'll probably play a decent factor in their ability, the Pelicans' ability to win the rebounding battle. But Valanciunas was a monster for them the other night, and they have, some other guys that will go board it too, as shown in that possession where the Thunder really just didn't box anything out. I think that's the key to keeping the momentum rolling is winning the rebound battle, finding a way to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Mason. I think that was part of the reason that a lot of people was picking against the Thunder heading into the playoffs. It's not only their youth, but the fact that they're so light in the front court. But what was encouraging, even though this kind of showed why people like the Warrior fans and Warrior analysts and Lakers fans wanted to match up against the Thunder in the first rounds because they thought of those three teams, the Thunder team would be the easiest to beat. But as we saw from the Lakers collapse against the Nuggets, you need someone cool, calm, and collected in those final minutes to bring you through those final moments. And I wrote about this in my column last week when I got my first opportunity to watch SGA in person, is that he has this aura and this calmness about him where he never seems like he's too pressed. He always seems like he's in control from his body control, his body language, and just how he responds to his team. I was really encouraged from what I saw with SGA and his ability to close out that game one for the Thunder. Moving back on to the TU program, there's been a lot of changes in their athletic department with their athletic director Rick Dixon retiring and also their SID retiring. What I wanted to get from each of you all is share with our audience, just a story. Take us behind the scenes of what it was like dealing with Rick Dixon and also Tom, those two.
Don Tomkowski. Okay, so I covered Tulsa from 2005 to 2012. I never had a chance to work with Rick Dixon, but Don Tomkowski, he was the right-hand man who I worked with the most through coaching changes, through everyday work with Tulsa. He turned out not only to be a professional person I worked with, but really one of my good friends. And I want to wish him the best. 40 years he worked at Tulsa. He was a guy who again, I consider him a close friend, and I want to wish him the very best. One of my favorite stories is one year we were down at Tulane covering a football game. It was a Friday night before a Saturday night game, and we were down on Bourbon Street. And I remember there was a group of us, like 10 of us. We were bar hopping on Bourbon Street, and it was 1:30 in the morning. We were at a bar, and out of nowhere, he goes out and buys pizza for all of us. He throws a slice of pizza in front of all of us at 1:30 in a bar. And we all asked the bartender, "Are you guys getting ready to close? Because it's 1:30." And the bartender tells us, "No, I just got here. My shift ends at 6 a.m." That was my first time on Bourbon Street. I didn't realize the bar stayed all night in Bourbon Street. And so we were there till like 3:30 in the morning. But Don Tomkowski, what a guy, and want to wish him the best. On and off the court, he really, really kept things going in that TU athletic department. He's one of those guys that TU fans really don't know who he is. But he really, all sports, not just football and basketball, but all sports. And fond farewell. And Rick Dixon, again, I didn't know him, but he appeared at TU at an important time. And for him to come back to TU and really get things going, that was important for the school. So those two guys, they did a lot for the school, especially at a crucial time. And all my best to both of them.
As far as DT is concerned, my first memory of him was when I was going back all the way back to the 80s when I was at the Tulsa Tribune and I was filling in on the TU beat, and I thought I had a really good idea for a player to do a preseason football feature on, hot prospect running back, and I was all gung-ho for it, and then DT steered me in another direction. And as it turned out, the direction he steered me in turned out to be a lot better feature than I would have written otherwise. That is a big role of the SID in order to lead you in the right direction, like on player features. And he's been helping us all in the media for 40 years. Very much appreciated. And you don't really notice the SID. A good SID, you don't really notice. It's sort of like an official in a game. You don't really notice the SID unless something screws up or you're not getting that coverage. But DT, just so great for 40 years. And then Rick Dixon had such an influential stint in their early 90s, hiring Tubby Smith. And of course, he has really made such an impact the second time around. He hired Angie Nelp, who he just extended right as we went on the air today, gave a contract extension through 2030. That was a big move right there. And then he also hired Kevin Wilson as football coach and Eric Kunkel as the men's basketball coach. So he's really definitely made a big impact, besides just done a huge job as far as a huge improvement raising money for the TU athletic program.
Let me just jump in and say SID, for those who don't know, stands for Sports Information Director.
Yeah, I mean, 100% shout out DT. Helped me out a lot back, a few years ago when I was an intern with the Tulsa World and I was actually stationed in Tulsa. Helped me out with getting interviews and having some different ideas for some different stories, and has even helped me as I've been kind of abroad in Norman with some things I've written about Kevin Wilson recently, kind of relating back to his time at OU and some of the players that played for him at OU. So really appreciate everything that he's done for me in my career. And from a Rick Dixon standpoint, have never had a chance to meet Rick, but to Barry's points, really impressed with the Kevin Wilson hire. I mean, I feel like that we're removed from it now a little bit, so we maybe don't feel the weight of it as much. And obviously, last year was kind of difficult. There were some growing pains for TU in the first year of the Kevin Wilson era, but I really think that that's a statement hire, and I really think that Kevin Wilson, especially this year, as wide open as it feels like the AAC is going to be, he has an opportunity here to get TU football playing back to what its standards should be. So excited to see that, and Rick Dixon is a big part of that.
We have a new segment that we're doing this week on today's show, and that is our rapid fire segment. We're going to start off with a little bit of a hypothetical for Barry. With speaking with the spirit of youth, Barry, NBA playoffs in a 7-game series, would you take this year's OKC Thunder team of the 2010 Thunder, who featured Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Kevin Durant?
I would take this year's Thunder over the 2010 Thunder because it's a deeper team, but I would not take it over the 2011 and 2012 Thunder.
I think for me, I really like Barry's reasoning. I think that, this team this year can just probably run laps around those other teams. I mean, obviously, KD, Russ, Harden, those are, future Hall of Fame guys, but those teams, didn't have a lot of depth. It seemed like they were always trying to bolster the depth at the trade deadline with some sort of minor acquisition, and they just never felt like they had enough depth. This team, Mark Dagnall's able to play, 11 deep in a playoff game. That really speaks to the talent the Thunder have cultivated. And I think that if you put this young group up against those guys, they would be able to stay fresh longer, and that would ultimately lead them to a win.
I'm an old guy. I'm going 2010 just because I am an old guy. I like the old guys. I'm going Kevin Durant. I think that prime Kevin Durant could make plays. I like Hall of Famers who is in their prime. I really like Westbrook, a young Westbrook. I love a young Harden too. I know the depth. They don't have the depth of the current team, but I really think that that team in a 7-game series, I really think that they would be able to make plays against and find ways to win.
You can for sure see the emergence of that young Thunder team. As a Mavericks fan, I was always fearful of playing the Thunder. Whether it was a regular season game or a playoff game, I was always fearful playing that Thunder team. Eric, your question. Will OU softball win its 4th consecutive national title this year?
I think they will because of their experience. I think they've done it 3 years in a row. It's going to be tougher this year because they don't have the pitching that they had in years past. But I think that their offense and their experience, I think that's what's going to get them over the hump. They've been there, they've done it before. They'll find a way.
I also feel pretty good about their odds. I think that they're a team that kind of probably they had a really long team meeting after the Houston series, which it was kind of like, yes, we should have swept the last place team in the Big 12, but there were still things that we could have done better. Is kind of, it seems like what was the synopsis of that team meeting. And I think they're a team that will be able to turn it on at the right time. They got to hit with runners in scoring position and not leave people on base. And you really need somebody that can continue to carry the load pitching wise, so that Kelly Maxwell is still, relatively fresh once you get into the postseason. But overall, still feel pretty good about their chances. Like Eric said, though, it will be harder this year than it's been the last 3 years.
Winners win, and OU will find a way, as Eric says.
Mason, your question. Quarterback change for OU. Will Jackson Arnold make all SEC team?
Not this season. You kind of look at, I was looking around this morning at the kind of some different rankings, different ideas of how the quarterbacks stack up in the SEC. And you got five guys at the top: Beck at Georgia, Ewers at Texas, Dart at Ole Miss, Milroe at Alabama, Cook at Missouri, that have played a lot of football and that all had pretty good years last year. Then you kind of got like the wild cards. You got Nico at Tennessee, you got Nussmeier who's stepping into the starting role at LSU, and you got Wegman who was really good at Texas A&M before he got injured last year. I think definitely like where I would probably rank Jackson Arnold right now is between those two groups that I mentioned. He could be he's not in the top five, but he's somewhere between like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And next year, after a lot of those guys that are in the top five have moved on to the NFL, then he probably has the opportunity to assert himself as, one of the top three. And that gives him a chance to make an all SEC team. But I definitely think there's going to be some growing pains this year. And so he's probably going to linger around that 6 to 10 ranking the entirety of the season, if I had to guess.
Too early to put expectations on Jackson. He only has one career start under his belt, and he's entering the toughest conference in America. I just don't think it's fair to put too many expectations on him. All SEC, that's too early to do that to Jackson.
Bear.
I will say that yes, it'll be interesting if OU gets anybody on the All SEC team. I don't think Jackson Arnold will be an All SEC quarterback this year.
All right, no all SEC for Jackson Arnold. Sorry, Sooner fans. As we do every week to wrap the show up, our parting shots. Barry, we'll start with you. What will be your parting shot to leave with our fans for this week?
Blake Griffin announced his retirement from the NBA last week. When people ask me about all-time great players I've seen in covering Oklahoma high school basketball for 30, 40 years, Blake Griffin is at the top of the list as far as players I knew immediately the moment I saw him play. This guy is going to be an NBA player. He had that type of impact, and got to see him all 4 years at Oklahoma Christian School. He was the Player of the Year in 2007, Tulsa World Player of the Year in 2007. And yes, I've seen some very talented players like Booker T. Washington's Richard Dumas, and Victory Christian's Clint Azabuki, who I thought the moment I saw them, they're going to be playing in the NBA. But Blake Griffin topped them all, and what a great career. So congratulations to Blake Griffin for an outstanding career in high school, at OU, and in the NBA.
Eric, your parting shot.
Congratulations to Steve Crackthorpe, who's getting inducted into the University of Tulsa Hall of Fame this weekend. The very first football team I covered at the Tulsa World was the 2005 Tulsa football team, and Crackthorpe led that team to a Conference USA championship, a Liberty Bowl championship, and Steve Crackthorpe is the first coach I covered. And what a great season that was. Paul Smith was the quarterback, but Crackthorpe really engineered a team to that title. It was all him, and I was so impressed with the job he did with that program. He only coached one more year before leaving Louisville, and sadly, he's really been battling Parkinson's disease. But just a great football mind, a great coach, a great person, and I enjoyed a friendship with him after he left. And just want to wish him the best, wish his sons the best, his family the best. A great man, and I'm hopeful that TU fans always remember that job that he did to help turn that program around and really set it in a direction that really over the last 2 decades has really excelled. And Steve, if you're out there, thanks for your friendship. Really want to wish you the best in everything that you do and the best in your health.
Mason, your final parting shot.
Well, it's now or never for Porter Moser with OU basketball. We're about five-ish, maybe a little bit more weeks removed from the season, and OU has had 4 players leave from the transfer portal and none coming in through the transfer portal. Fans are getting really up in arms, really frustrated with Porter's inability to capitalize on the transfer portal opportunities. And right now it's local guys that's really concerning. The fact that he can't even pin down kids with Oklahoma ties. You know, OU had Kevin Overton, who was transferring from Drake from a visit. This is a kid that at one point played in Norman North with one of Porter Moser's sons, and Overton ends up committing to Texas Tech after visiting OU. And you look at, they're also been trying to get Brandon Garrison from OSU and Sean Padula, who's from Edmond, who's coming back from Virginia Tech, and have had those guys on visits and have not, at least as of yet, been able to get them to commit. And a lot of whispers out there about those guys potentially going in different directions from OU. So after he bagged a really, really, really incredible portal class last year, Porter Moser struggling to get any sort of traction in the portal this offseason. And it's really concerning for the outlook of the season, because obviously OU has missed the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row. You know, a fourth is not going to fly. Porter Moser will be gone if he does not make the NCAA tournament this season. So the pressure's on him to find a way to get something out of the transfer portal, to salvage whatever he can and put together a competitive team for next season.
I have one final quick question, yes or no, answer only. Is Blake Griffin a Hall of Famer, Barry?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mason?
Absolutely.
All right, Blake Griffin, Hall of Famer. That'll do it for another episode of the Tulsa World Sports Extra podcast. For Juwan Lee, Barry Lewis, Eric Bailey, and Mason Young, we'll see you guys next week.